It's tricky because every student is different. Different backgrounds, different experiences, and different levels of motivation. Traditional teaching methods can leave them feeling confused, intimidated, left out, unheard, alone, discouraged. Top Hat's dynamic courseware helps you personalize your teaching to resonate with all students. In your lectures, in your assignments, and even in your textbooks. You can create learning moments that matter to your students. With 14 question types, you can drive real-time understanding, encourage active participation, and give every student a voice. The more your students engage with Top Hat, the more insights you get into their performance, giving you more opportunities to adapt your course as the semester unfolds. This helps students build confidence and drive better comprehension. How do we keep students engaged? The answer is right in front of you. Top Hat. Make every mind wonder.
Welcome everyone to our final week of Top Hat Summer Camp programming. If you're just joining us, we've been hosting sessions on the start of the term and teaching a great day of class with Dr. James Lang, as well as faculty-led presentations on engaging students through dynamic lectures and outside of class using interactive custom-built learning resources. And if you weren't able to attend these sessions, we've got you covered. We'll be making all the recordings from our summer camp programming available to all of you after we close the event. So now we're in the final leg of our journey and our theme, setting the stage for student success. Today, you're going to hear from two amazing faculty presenters on their approach to creating assignments and assessments that not only engage and motivate, but improve academic outcomes. But first up, we've got a real treat for all of you. Our first session is strengthening student learning skills in the age of AI, and it is my pleasure to introduce your host, Dr. Bradley Cohen, Top Hat's Chief Academic Officer and the three-time winner of the camper with the most mosquito bites in a single session. Brad, welcome. You have the floor.
Well, thank you, Eric, and welcome all. I am coming to you from Minnesota, which is the capital of mosquitoes, and I have been bitten quite a bit in this rainy spring and summer. So anyway, welcome all of you. I can't believe we've arrived at the last day of summer camp. I hope those of you who have attended have benefited and are looking forward to this one. It really is a pleasure to be hosting this final session. I'm really excited about what's in store today. If you've joined our webinars in the past, you know we like to keep things active. So I'm loving the introductions coming through, seeing where you're all coming from. If you want to tell us a little bit about your ritual, getting ready for the fall semester, that would be awesome. We hear routinely from participants that one of the values of attending these sessions is hearing from their peers, as well as our experts. So as we go forward, please contribute your own experiences, resources that you found helpful, reactions to the talk in the chat. If you have questions for our speaker today, please do use the Q&A, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can throughout the session. Eric mentioned Dr. James Lang spoke a couple of weeks ago on the importance of the first day of class. He discussed a number of approaches to set the stage for a successful term. Framing the course in terms of a big question to be explored was one that Eric and I both really reacted to positively. Students coming into the classroom and seeing something as a goal right away really helps to motivate them and get them excited about what's in store, as well as modeling what the experience is going to be like on that first day for the entire course. As important as that first day and that first week are, the initial excitement that students have isn't likely to be sustained without additional effort once they begin to really hit the hard points of the course and wrestle with the course material itself. So the question we're going to explore today is, how can we set the stage for student success throughout the course? As you'll hear, getting students to become more self-aware of their own learning process can have an outsized effect on their academic achievement. The best part is that getting students to think about their learning, how they're feeling, what's working and what isn't, this isn't something that is going to take a significant amount of work for you. So today you're going to learn a number of low-lift activities that you can use to help students strengthen their learning skills to succeed, not only in your course, but in the workplace as lifelong learners. At a time when things seem to be moving faster than ever with the proliferation of AI, I think it's especially important to note that the benefits of self-regulated learning extend far beyond the immediate academic performance in your course. The ability to learn independently, to think critically and approach challenges methodically, to evaluate different solutions, make informed decisions, to take personal accountability and initiative, not only in managing tasks, but in seeking out opportunities for personal improvement. The ability to be resilient and adaptable in the face of failure. These are all skills that we can nurture that will allow our students to navigate in an increasingly complex world, adapt to new challenges, and continue growing throughout their lives. If you've doubted the value of what you do, doubt no more. This stuff is absolutely critical, and we have the opportunity in our courses to shape their lives in these ways. Before we get to our main presentation, just a quick word about Top Hat. For those who are unfamiliar or joining us for the first time, Top Hat is the leading provider of student engagement solutions in higher education. Through interactive polls, quizzes, discussions, and a growing catalog of interactive texts, the Top Hat platform enables instructors to bring active learning to their in-person and virtual classrooms. This past year, we launched ACE, our AI-powered teaching and learning assistant that makes it easier for you to integrate frequent low-stakes assessments into your course materials. With a click of a button, ACE generates questions with supporting hints and explanations, all based on the context of your course content. We also give faculty the tools to create their own interactive course materials or customize texts from our growing catalog of national titles to reduce costs to students and increase the impact of their content. So lots of great features to help you engage your students in learning, to provide opportunities for feedback and reflection from the first day of class and beyond. With that, let's introduce our special guest for today, Dr. Linda Nilson. Dr. Nilson is Director Emeritus of the Office of Teaching Effectiveness and Innovation at Clemson University and author of a number of influential books, including Specifications Grading, Restoring Rigor, Motivating Students, and Saving Faculty Time, as well as Creating Self-Regulated Learners, Strategies to Strengthen Student Self-Awareness and Learning Skills. She's delivered over 500 keynotes, webinars, and live workshops at conferences, colleges, and universities, both nationally and internationally. Dr. Nilson, it is lovely to have you with us.
It is such a pleasure to be here. And Brad, Eric, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to this audience. I'm just so glad you're here. But Brad, I must tell you that I haven't had a mosquito bite all summer. So my apologies, my sympathy, but not really sympathy at all. So anyway,
Awesome.
so what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about self-regulated learning, and
I'm going to
coming on up.
pass the presentation over to you now.
Okay, there we are. Hooray. Okay. And we're talking about engaging students in their own learning. So, what am I really talking about here? Well, here's what's going to be what will be your benefits by the end of this time, the end of this session. You're going to be able to explain what self-regulated learning is. And right now, I'm going to give you a very informal definition of it. It is learning to learn on one's own. And that is critically important for your students because they're going to go out into the job market and they're going to have to keep up with their field, whatever that is. And they won't have anybody to hold their hands. They won't have anybody to guide them, give them study questions or anything like that. Now, they might think, and this is where AI comes in, they might think, well, I don't have to learn how to learn. I don't have to learn at all. If I've got a task to do, a report, a presentation to make, no problem. I'll just delegate it to my AI program. Sure, right. What if somebody asks you a question, like maybe your boss, or somebody on your team? What if somebody disagrees with you? What if somebody challenges you? Then what are you going to do? Right? So you really do have to learn how to learn for the rest of your life. You're also going to be able, by the end of this session, to explain how self-regulated learning enhances student learning, focus, and performance. And you'll hear at least some of the evidence. And you're going to be able to induce students to practice self-regulated learning with very specific activities and assignments. I wish I could give you all of them here. I can't, but you'll be able to get a few. You'll be able to get started. Now, here's unfortunately what most students think about learning. They really don't know what's involved. They think it kind of happens to them or doesn't happen to them, sort of like the weather. And it's passive learning. There's no such thing as passive learning. I'm sorry. And furthermore, they think that learning in college should be easy because it was in the past, or they wouldn't be in college, right? And furthermore, if it's not happening, well, it's hopeless. They weren't born with the talent. They weren't born to do math. They weren't born to I don't know, do chemistry, whatever it is. Or it's your fault. It's the instructor's fault, because you're paid to make it easy. You're paid to make it happen, right? And so you gave me the C, not like I earned it. Well, there's an antidote to this sort of thinking, and it's self-regulated learning. This is the formal definition now. It's the conscious planning, monitoring, and evaluation of one's learning in order to maximize it. It's multi-stage. Now you figure, well, planning is probably before the learning task. Monitoring is during. Evaluation is once at the conclusion of the learning task. But it's also multi-dimensional. Now, metacognition, that's a very familiar term. That is thinking about your thinking, being aware of your thinking, watching your thinking. So that's fine, and evaluating your thinking. But there's also motivational and emotional control. And most students don't think that they have any control over their emotions and motivations. Most people think that, so it's not just students. But that's not true. That's not true, and I'll show you in a bit. And then there's control over the physical environment. When we decide to do a learning task, where are we going to decide to do it? What are the circumstances? What are the physical setting? And how are we going to prepare our bodies for the learning task? So there's that dimension as well. So if you take the stages of it and you cross it with the dimensions of it, you get a grid that looks something like this. And these are called the learner's questions, the self-regulated learner's questions. And it can also be the basis of activities and assignments. Now, you're going to be receiving a handout at the end of this with all the questions and all the cells. But I'm just going to highlight a few to give you sort of like a feeling about what I'm talking about. So let's look at metacognition. So before a learning task, what should a self-regulated learner be doing? Well, they should be asking themselves, what kind of a task is this? Now, that's just, when they're first starting a task like this, usually they know, because 2 days later, 2 days before, I'm sorry, they were doing it. They know that I'm going to be reading my biology textbook. All right. And I know what it looks like. And so I even know what strategies I should use, because that's another question they should ask themselves. What strategies should I use? Well, if they've been keeping up with the readings, they have tried different strategies. So I give a list of these, by the way, but please share them with your students, because your students think that the strategy is to go from the first word to the last word. Just put their eyes over it, and somehow it will magically get into their cognition, about which they are wrong. It's all about focus, all about concentration, right? We know that. They don't know that. Trust me. And then they're supposed to set a goal. A goal? Yes, because you've got to evaluate yourself at the end. Is that how, did you learn? Did you learn what you wanted to learn? Well, what did you want to learn? Well, what's my goal? For instance, can I recall 5 or more main points after I'm finished with this reading? Can I answer the study questions? There's got to be a goal or there can't be an evaluation. All right, now let's look at the meta-emotional side of things. Okay, you ask yourself, how interested am I? How motivated am I? If I'm not particularly interested or motivated, how can I change that? What can I pull from my course as to the relevance of this lesson? What is the value of what I'm going to be learning? And of course, it's up to us to supply that relevance, to supply that value, but it's up to the learner to remember it. Okay, so, this is something that we have to do. And also we have to think about how the learner has to think about how confident he or she is in his or her ability to do this task. And, there's a Goldilocks phenomenon here. You have to be just confident enough, but not overconfident. So that's important. And then the environmental part, the physical part, the best environment. Am I in a good physical place? Am I in a good physical position? What about the temperature in the room? What about the background sounds? Did I have enough sleep? Did I have the right amount of coffee? Not too little, not too much. What about that cell phone? Did I put it in another room? Right? Monitoring. Okay, you got to think, okay, so I'm in the middle of this task now. Is what I'm doing making sense? Am I making good progress? Am I focused? How well are my strategies working? Should I change strategies if I'm not getting the success that I would like? And how is what I am learning now related to what I already know? That's a very important question to be asking along the way, because you've got to hook new knowledge onto old knowledge. Got to hook it onto something. And then there's the meta-emotional part where you're checking to see if you are really involved in and motivated to do this learning. If you're feeling challenged, that's good, unless you're resisting it. So you have to look into your heart and decide whether you're resisting it and why you're resisting it, and just to suspend your judgment if you are resisting it, to learn this new material. And then the environmental, check to see that the place and the position and everything you have going for yourself physically is still working. At the end, after your self-evaluation or self-reflection, okay, did I reach my goal? Can I do what I set out to do? What do I need to review? Then you go back and you do it. What am I still having trouble understanding? Did my approaches, my strategies work? And should I do something different next time? Well, of course, the emotional side is this is like thinking like, well, if I didn't meet my goal, do I give up or do I simply try another strategy? And that's it. As students too easily give up. They need to get, to understand what their options are for achieving their success. And then on the environmental side, okay, do I need to decide on a new place? Maybe instead of a coffee shop, I should go to the library, right? They need to try new things. They need to experiment on themselves. And when they realize the necessity of their doing that, I mean, they're learning about themselves. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, so let's consider the benefits of self-regulated learning to students. And this is all research-based. Yes, students learn more and they perform better. Their grades go up. Their thinking deepens. They're more focused on learning. It helps their professionalism. It increases their motivation because nothing motivates like success. And also, self-regulated learning is related to adult success. So it's easy, if you tell them what the research says, it's kind of easy to talk them into at least giving it a whirl. And here's some of the evidence that you might want to share with your students, and this is just some of it. There's a guy named John Hattie from Down Under, and every few years he comes out with a meta analysis. And what he does is he considers all the factors that we know are related to learning. And his last study, there were 256 of them. And he figures out how strong their effect. So that he's looking at effect size is on learning. Okay. So teacher credibility, an effect size of 0.90 on learning. What does that mean? Well, that for each standard deviation, let's say, it increase in teacher credibility, that learning increases by 9/10 of a standard deviation. That's a very sizable effect. Scaffolding, we know that works, right? That's effect size is 0.82. Teacher clarity, 0.75. Then we get to the things that are related to self-regulated learning. Evaluation and reflection. Hey, that's as strong as teacher clarity. And metacognitive strategies, 0.60. Very sizable effect. So a stronger effect than all these other things that we know works, like spaced practice versus mass practice, standards-based learning, service learning, peer tutoring, formative feedback, note-taking, time on task. I mean, we know that self-regulated learning is very, very strong and stronger than these things that we know work. Here's another set of evidence, and this was, I'm going to be talking about a study that was done by a gentleman named Barry Zimmerman and his team that did a series of research studies at New York City College of Technology. He studied developmental math sections, specifically 6 of them involving 140 students. And he divided them, well, he used a randomized experimental design, and he randomly assigned 3 of the 6 sections to just receive the regular traditional training. And that was the control group. And the other 3 sections incorporated specific self-regulated learning activities. That was the treatment group. All of the sections got the same 15 to 20-minute quizzes with 4 or 5 problems every 2 to 3 class periods, the same 3 major exams, and the same final. So all standardized. But here was some of the differences. The instructors in the self-regulated learning sections, the treatment groups, first explained to their classes how errors offered learning opportunities. That was a new concept for students. Errors, I think, we want to avoid errors. But no, these are learning opportunities. And the instructors also modeled and provided practice in detecting errors and adapting the strategies. So the students got used to the idea of, okay, making mistakes, it's okay, and I can work with mistakes. In addition, on each of the quizzes, and just on the quizzes, that the students not only had to give the solution to the problem, with all the work shown, but also give a rating of their confidence and their ability to solve it before they started it, and then after they either gave up on it or did solve it. And this was designed to give students who are overly confident the knowledge that they were overly confident. So this is like a warning for them. You tend to be overly confident. Students also had the opportunity to earn back some of the lost points on the quizzes, just the quizzes, by completing a self-reflection form for each missed or incomplete problem with an error analysis and a redo. Well, here are the results. A significantly higher percentage of the students in the treatment group passed the course, 68% versus 49%. And the gateway test that was required for admission into credit-bearing courses, 64% versus 39%. Now, Zimmerman's team also repeated this randomized experimental design study in an intensive 5-week developmental math course in the summer, and they got very similar results. And again, those in the treatment group passed the course at a much higher rate, 84%, than those in the control group, 63%. And 60% of the treatment group successfully completed a credit-bearing math course the following fall, versus only 34% of the control group. This was life-changing for a lot of these students. And one of the students actually went on to become an engineer. Who would have thought, starting in developmental math? But he did, and it was all because he learned how to learn. Well, the developmental writing group at the college got wind of this, and they said the Zimmerman and his team, hey, come over and do the same thing with our developmental writing courses. So they did that in a summer course. And again, still emphasis on identifying and correcting errors in quizzes. The quizzes were asking students to identify a topic sentence, to summarize a passage, to paraphrase a passage for a certain audience. And in the revision, and so the students had to look and see what errors they might have made in the quizzes, if they made any errors at all. Well, if they made any errors, again, they had the chance to get some points back by redoing the writing task that they didn't do correctly, and to answer questions about where they went wrong in the quiz, do an error analysis, like what were you thinking during the quiz, how did you prepare for it, and how will you prepare better next time. So that 72% of the treatment group students passed the gateway exam, while only 52% of the control group students passed it, and 65% of the treatment group successfully completed a credit-bearing writing course the following semester, compared to only 32% of the control group. So I'm going to pause right now. Any questions from the audience? I can answer just a couple of them.
Yeah, Linda, the evidence is really quite compelling here.
Yeah.
Already seen a little bit of chatter in the chat, and we'll pick this up at the end.
Okay. Okay, great.
I do want to maybe give you a chance to talk a little bit about the fact that maybe this is a continuum of development. So if I have students who are starting at 0,
yes,
isn't to make them complete, perfect, self-directed learners at the end of a single course. But there are activities that you're going to go on.
Yes, indeed.
That can be implemented to help them grow in this way. So
absolutely.
I just a second to talk about the idea of a continuum.
Absolutely. And by the way, it doesn't take long to become a self-regulated learner, especially after your grades go up. Then you're really motivated. So, but how do you get students to do this? Okay, you run self-regulated learning class activities and make self-regulated learning assignments. Don't be scared. Students don't mind it. These are short, they're low stress, and you make them worth something, okay? Like a point. And again, with no stress, what's the problem, right? Students don't cheat on this. It's easier to just tell the truth. You don't mind it because the class activities, you don't grade at all. And the grading of assignments isn't really grading. It's a pass-fail sort of thing. And the assignment passes, they get their point if they complete it. So if you ask them to answer 2 questions, they answer 2 questions. It's a proper length. Maybe you said at least 50 words for each answer. Hey, no problem. They get that point. And the results become very evident very quickly. So there are self-regulated learning activities and assignments for quote, every occasion. There's for start and end of the course. There's some for reading wrappers, they're called. Then there's lecture wrappers, and I'm going to talk about those later, along with the start and end of course wrappers. There are assignment wrappers, sometimes called meta assignments, or exam wrappers. And then there are occasional check-ins that you might have do with your students. And again, they're all in the book. If you're really that interested in it, you can pursue them there. And you don't have to do them all by any means. So start and end of course. You can give students an assignment on learning and thinking. And in the handout, I recommend 2 of them that are on the web. And be sure you have a discussion. This is something that you can't, because students are going to want to talk about this because they're going to learn all these new things they didn't know. So you can use Top Hat for the discussion. You could do a word cloud, for instance, but there are other options with Top Hat as well. Because again, students are going to say, my God, I learned something. I had no idea that this is what thinking involved. So they'll want to share that. You can have students set goals. And this is about their course. I know it's the first day of class. And then they write about how I earned an A in this course. At the end of the course, so this is like a bookend, they write a little essay, if you will, a little paragraph, how I earned an A in this course or not, or they take responsibility for their grade. And this is important to get them to think about what it'll take to get an A in the course. And you know what? They know what it'll take to get an A. They do understand. They're just not doing it. But when they somehow then they write something down, it can help a lot of them do those things. And when they find out that, yeah, there are other students doing these things, that's more motivating for them. They realize, well, this isn't really impossible. Maybe I'll try to get an A. Then there's the knowledge survey that you do this at the beginning of the course and then at the end. And it's a series of questions or tasks covering the knowledge and skills in a course or unit. Some people do it by each unit of the course. And here you could get them from anywhere. But what the student's answer is, and again, you can use Top Hat for this beautifully, students' perceived ability or confidence to answer the question or perform the task correctly. So you don't have them solve the problem, for instance. They just say, well, whether they can do it or not, or whether they're confident or not. So you can have them answer just a question like this, from very confident to not at all confident. Again, Top Hat's perfect for this sort of a thing. But here's a warning. Students will often overestimate their knowledge and abilities, except possibly the best students, because they will tend to underestimate when they know the least. But in the STEM and the health and medical fields, this is less likely. The students are more likely to be right on with their estimate because they realize that they don't understand the terminology. Maybe they've never seen the words before. So they'll say, I don't think I can do this because I don't even know what they're asking for. So here's one just for the end of the course. How to succeed. You have the students write a letter to their next cohort of students, and you make these available, these letters as well. How to succeed in the course, and what are some of the cool things they're going to be learning and learning how to do. Students pay attention to other students in a way they don't pay attention to us. So this can be very helpful to both the students for next semester, but also for the students that are leaving that can then they get to review the course in their minds, right? The content, the skills, and what it takes to succeed, whether they succeeded with an A or not. They know what it takes. So, any more questions and answers?
So, Linda,
Or should I move along? I'd be happy to move along.
Yeah, you know what, Linda, let's move along. I think the
Okay,
questions are
sure.
received
Sure.
after these other examples.
So let's talk about a few lecture wrappers. And these are, it can be for a live lecture, a recorded lecture, or a remote lecture. And this makes for an interactive lecture. And we know that those are very, very effective and really easy to do. So, and again, Top Hat can be very useful for at least some of these. Periodic free recall, which is self-testing. So you don't have to do the testing. Students test themselves. Students, let's say, listen to your mini lecture, and then you ask them to write down all the important points that they can recall, any questions that they might have. And then they work with a partner to compare their notes, to fill in their notes, and to fine-tune their notes. So you don't have to do a thing, but give them a few minutes, just a few minutes to do this. And so, and all you've got to do is pause, right? And tell them what to do. Another one is this one, an active listening check. Students listen to your mini lecture for the key points. You have them write down those key points. You reveal what those key points are, and then students self-assess their listening skills. And in the study, the research that was done on this, from the first to the third time that it was done, 45% of the students got all the key points in the mini lecture. By the third time, 75% of the students were getting all the key points. This is very effective, very quickly. Concept test. And believe me, Top Hat's tailor-made for this. At the end of your mini lecture, you display a multiple choice item on the content. And by the way, Top Hat can generate these questions for you. So you don't even have to do that. You poll the students for their answer, have them discuss their answers with a peer or two for about a minute, and then repeat step one. And generally, the peers who got it correctly will teach the peers who didn't. And again, you don't have to do much of anything. All you've got to do is put a poll up, right? Nothing to it. Here's other things, reflection prompts at the end of the mini lecture. For instance, you have them answer questions, like a question, like what's the most important or valuable or useful or surprising point or concept that you got from the mini lecture? What did you understand the least? What are your emotional reactions? Might not work with chemistry, but it could work very well in a social science. Here's some other questions you can ask them. Make connections. Ask them to connect this new knowledge from your mini lecture to their prior knowledge, very important, to other courses they're taking or courses that they have taken, to connect maybe this new knowledge to their beliefs or values, or to other disciplines that they have studied. Though those are just ideas. I mean, the sky's the limit. And then their visual study tools. You can have students make visuals. And when they do, they're actively integrating, organizing, and structuring the knowledge. And nothing works better for improving students' conceptual understanding, for deepening their learning, for improving their long-term retention, and making retrieval easier. Honest. And, even when you're just using visuals yourself and sharing them with your students, just using visuals lowers the cognitive load for students, which means that visuals require less working memory and fewer cognitive transformations than text. We're expert readers. We have no idea the mental acrobatics that students are going through when they're reading something alien to them. It's like a foreign language. Chemistry is another language entirely. But really any discipline is. Visuals cue text and details. And I'll convince you of this by having you reflect on when you were back in college, you were in an exam and you couldn't remember the answer to something. So what did you do? You pictured the page in your textbook where that knowledge was. And you realize, okay, 2 columns, and I know that knowledge is in the middle of the second column, and you can almost read it, right? Helps retrieval tremendously. And you didn't sit around and memorize the layouts of the pages in your textbook. No, this visual went seamlessly into your long-term memory. Visuals are minor miracles for our brains. And besides, visuals are cross-cultural. The fewer English words you use with your students, the more likely that your students who use English as a second language or an alternative language, the easier it is for them to learn. So these are just common visuals. I'll just show you some pictures. This is like a flow chart, which is good when the knowledge has to do with the sequence of events or operations or a process of some sort. Then you have the concept circle or Venn diagrams, which shows relationships among concepts, categories, equations. I've seen them done with topics, principles, and I'm sure you're familiar with Venn diagrams, but they're all different kinds of arrangements you can make with circles. Here's a matrix that you can use students to with students to classify or compare and contrast types of. And this is just an example. These are very, very effective for review before exams. And as long as the students fill in the cells, that they can just remember that matrix when they're in the exam, and they can almost read the cells when they're in that exam. Some knowledge really goes with a cycle, and other knowledge is best portrayed in a concept map, which is good for showing hierarchy. That is that from the most inclusive, general, broad, abstract concept or whatever, or equation or topic or principle at the top in the center, going down through increasingly more exclusive, specific, narrow, and concrete concepts, topics, principles, etc. By the way, a mind map is really the same thing. It's hierarchical, but it's also used for free association. So live recorded or remote lecture wrappers, these are your options. And those are just some of the options. There are more. And Top Hat can really come in handy for most of these. So, any questions?
Wow, Linda, that was
Yeah.
an amazing amount of ideas about how to support students' pursuit of self-regulated learning. So I want to ask a couple of questions that have come both through the chat and the Q&A.
Okay.
The first is really about complexity. So returning to the question I hinted at in the first break. So let me give you a couple of concrete contexts.
Sure.
Teaching a class of 350 students, ranging from first to fourth year students. So high variability in their growing self-regulated capability and in their ability to profit from a kind of a think, pair, share sort of model. So that kind of, that kind of complexity. How can you help us, find our way forward to help our students in self-regulated learning development in that kind of very large, very diverse population?
Well, yeah, some of the students are going to be more advanced, but okay. Even if you are a self-regulated learner, it's not to say you don't benefit from doing it. I mean, doing it in a classroom, or doing it with respect to an assignment. You're simply refining it. I mean, this is something that you'd better be doing for the rest of your life. Okay, that's all I can say. So it doesn't get boring to learn about yourself. What you'll find is probably the more advanced students will be simply doing this at a higher level. But it can, and by the way, some of the advanced students still don't know self-regulated learning. Trust me on this one. What have they been doing? They've been memorizing. That's not learning. That's not learning. Learning is more in the area of self-testing, but not memorizing. It's getting it at the conceptual level. So I don't think it makes any difference as to the backgrounds of the students. What would be nice if you can, if you're doing like something with peers where they're dealing, let's say with the note taking, for instance, where they share their notes with peers, it would be nice if you could mix up the class to an extent where you've got, the first and second year sitting next to third and fourth year. That would be lovely, because then they could really help each other in that way. But I don't think it really matters what their level is. And again, this is something that's going to help all students learn whatever it was that you were talking about. Let's say like in your lecture or what was in the readings.
So maybe a related question. What do I do? There's a lot of conversation in the chat about our students today. From helicopter parenting, students
Yes,
who are kind of invited to be passive and somebody else should come to their rescue,
yeah,
to to just students, as you said at the start of your presentation, students who are, arms crossed, expecting you to deliver the learning to them passively. So
yeah.
how do you get them started in how do you get them to own self-regulated learning as a goal?
Yeah. First of all, you promise them, and believe me, you will make good on your promise that their grades will increase. Now, no, not the A students. I'm sorry. A is the end of it. Okay. Right. But, but you will make their learning in their careers easier. Right. And they will learn that AI is not going to bail them out. Okay. So, and that's going to be news to your A students, to be sure. But you can promise them that they will perform better. And all the other benefits, they'll be able to focus more. They'll become more professionalized. They will be able to have more adult success. They will become more motivated. And this, I mean, this comes out of research. This can be for the students who aren't doing this at all, and that could be really all your students, but they are going, it's going to be life-changing for them. It's just these little things, these little tasks that might take them a couple of minutes that can be life-changing. And they're going to learn that, yeah, they really do have to be active. One other thing, the readings that I talked about at the beginning of the course on thinking and learning, that hopefully will also get through to them, because they will find out that learning is nothing like what they thought it is. Now, you're not going to be telling them good news, because you're going to be saying that, gee, you have to be here, right? Show up. You've got to be there doing, just do the task. It won't hurt. It will do nothing but help you. And it could really change your life.
So I've certainly had this experience with my own children. I've heard this from other faculty who have pursued these kinds of strategies, that there are some students who try, and as you say, it doesn't hurt them, but
Yeah.
it's not helping them. They're as at sea in self-directed activity as they are in the course itself. So how do you help them kind of, bump up to that metacognitive space where they can, be an observer of their learning in the way that's really necessary here in the end?
Well, that's what the exercises, they're different exercises focus on different things, but yes, they need to be an observer of themselves and their own learning, but they also need to care. I mean, for whatever reason, I don't care if they just, they just want better grades. It doesn't matter why. It's just that they matter, that they learn. And what they're going to find out when they start doing these things, they're going to realize, because they haven't been, let's say, like self-quizzing, that they weren't learning anything. And that's going to, I don't know, sober them up about what learning really involves. That unless you ask yourself what you just got out of that learning task, you have no idea. That it's not, reading is not a matter of going from the first word to the last word with your eyes. It's not an eye exercise. It is a thinking exercise. Now, some students will think, well, I don't want to think. I mean, that's going to happen. And you know what? If they don't want to think, I'm sorry, you see, but you have to. And AI isn't going to think for you. Sorry.
No,
And
no,
yeah, if you
uh,
want to be a success in life, yeah,
yeah. I mean, at some point, these hard truths have to be
yes,
shared, right? And I
yes,
think Kathleen has expressed in the chat, in her chat post here, a feeling that I encountered quite a bit at the conference I was at just this week, with over 800 educators from around the country. There's still a COVID hangover kind of problem
yes,
in the classroom, where students are just deeply disengaged.
Yeah.
And I think it was Flower Darby's final talk where she said, she quoted a neuroscientist who said, you can't think about, if you don't care about something, you
Yeah.
can't. And so I think part of the job here, a foundation, is to cultivate caring, or at least interest, or at least awareness that effort is required, right? And try to get them to buy into it.
Yes.
What you're
Yes.
suggesting then in the face of a diversity of challenges is to try a variety of these strategies, it seems.
Yes. There are lots of them.
Right, and students will find the ones that work for them, right? Is
Yeah.
that?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And
It-
they will learn, they'll always learn something about themselves. And maybe they will learn that that they aren't interested, and nothing's going to make them interested. And you know what? As long as you've supplied them with the knowledge of the relevance of your material for their careers, for life, for whatever, you've done your job. You know, you can't make people want to learn. You can only give them the inspiration if they take it, right? You know, but they got to take that inspiration.
Is it our responsibility to assess their development as self-directed learners? How do we help them see that they're making progress, or is that part of their own journey?
Well, one of the things that I'm not talking about today that you can do at the beginning and the end of the course is to give them, administer an instrument on either metacognitive activities or on other self-regulated activities. There are two of them out there, and again, they're free. You know, they're on the web, and so the students can take one of those instruments, which, by the way, teaches them a whole slew of self-regulated learning activities. One of these things is just for like problem solving disciplines, and the other one is for any discipline. And they learn additional activities that are self-regulated learning. And then they can they can do the instrument again at the end of the semester to see if they've been doing those things. You know, if they, and again, you don't grade them, but I would think they'd be curious to find out how well they've been doing it. But if you're going to be doing self-regulated learning activities at all during the semester, I really strongly suggest that you start the course with something that highlights self-regulated learning.
Right, and that connects directly to Jim's advice
Yes.
in our first summer camp event, where he
Yes.
said, you want to set the tone first on the first day, first week
Yes.
of class. This is what it's going to be like in this course.
Yes.
So self-regulated learning is going to be, woven into this course in some. So on that, if I'm a newbie to this, we know from a lot of evidence that educators who try a new pedagogical approach often struggle initially to get it right. Is there advice you have for somebody who's just trying to step into this, besides do it early in the course? Is there something that they can do that minimizes the risk of their failure and maximizes the benefit to the student? Or how would you recommend getting started here?
I would say just pick the easiest activities. Do something at the very start. And it's a good idea to then do a bookend right at the end. But there are dozens and dozens and dozens of different activities that you can choose from. And I've just given you a sample, just a small sample of like not even a dozen all told. So, just pick, these can be easy. There's nothing that's complicated about, after a mini lecture, asking them a question that gets them to review that mini lecture and reflect, okay, what did I find surprising? What was it that that I thought was particularly valuable? These I just give them 30 seconds to a minute to write something down, right? And then you can have them handed into you. You could have them. I really like the idea word clouds, because students can see what each other said, but it's private. It's private. Whatever you decided to say is private, and students don't have to know that you personally said it. So these are really, and they're really interesting. Students, well, people really look at word clouds because they want to figure out, okay, well, what really won on this one? What were some of the big ideas here? And it's a fascinating tool. It's great. So
Wonderful. Well, I think we have time for maybe one last question here.
sure.
Uh, you mentioned earlier students, ranges of accuracy regarding their own confidence with respect to their learning. How can you help students who are maybe wildly misperceiving their degree of self-regulation or their readiness for the test through these kinds of activities? They're kind of doing okay in these, but honestly, they're getting lucky, or they're just not fully tuned into their level of mastery. How can you help them guard against that and not experience a very unhappy surprise?
Okay, yeah. Well, for one thing, you make them reflect on it. You have them reflect on it. Say, how confident are you that you can do knowledge surveys, by the way, all the time. Some people do, but you can have them reflect on how confident they are in a before and after sort of situation. Okay. That's the best way to do it, because then they see, oh, I thought I could do this, and I thought it'd be easy, and I was completely flat out wrong. And so, yeah, I mean, they call it tough love, but students have to face the music. They have to face the truth about themselves and their tendency to do this. And generally, who's the one who are the ones who overestimate their ability? The struggling students. Those who are really, and because they don't want to be struggling, they really, really don't, but they really, really are. And so then they've got to face that. Otherwise, they'll never get past it.
And they have the most to gain from developing these skills.
Exactly. They have the most to gain. The A students, but we don't worry about them anyway, right? We're worried about the rest of the class, the rest of the students. And so you just make them think about how confident are they? How ready do they think they are for this? And then they find out how ready they were. But you need to pause and have them, okay, given what you knew about your ability to let's say get into logarithms and do them correctly, how correct were you at the beginning? So they've got to have a record of this that they wrote down somewhere, how confident they were, so they can look back and think, oh my Lord, I was so wrong. Right. But it's a private acknowledgement. You don't have to get involved in it. Right. It's a private thing.
Well, Linda, I really want to thank you for joining us today. I'm seeing the accolades come in here. Everyone has very much enjoyed this. Please join me in thanking Dr. Linda Nilson for sharing an extraordinary amount of wisdom with us regarding how to help students develop this incredibly important capacity.
Well, it was a pleasure. It really was.
Thank you. Well, there are a lot of opportunities to keep the learning going. If you haven't had the chance to read one of her books, I'd encourage you to do so. You can see them here on the screen. Really, these are all invaluable contributions to the field, and I can't encourage them highly enough. We've also
Thank you, Brad.
We've also created a template that you can use in Top Hat to incorporate some of the activities that Dr. Nilson has shared with us today. This will make it easier for you to add in various reflection and self-awareness prompts directly into your course. So we, and more importantly, Dr. Nilson, have done this work for you to make it easier for you to put these into action. And we'll be sending out directions on how to access and leverage this in our follow-up communications. Now, quickly before we sign off here, here's a sneak peek of what's ahead. Our Fall Higher Learning's webinar series will begin on September 12th with Dr. Terrell Strayhorn as we explore unlocking the power of belonging in your course. And on October 17th, we'll be hosting Dr. Chandra McGuire, who will share insights and practices that you can use to boost student motivation and mastery in STEM courses. If you want to learn more about these, you can follow the link on the slide there. And last, when the webinar closes, you'll be directed to our faculty AI survey. This is something that Eric and I have been working on, and we are seeking to understand the current state of evidence-based teaching practices like those Linda has shared here, and the role that AI may or may not be playing in your evolving teaching practice. This will take less than 15 minutes to complete, and if you share your email address, we'll enter you into a drawing to win $250 gift card. And of course, you'll receive a copy of the survey afterwards. We would really love to have your participation in this. And as for summer camp, we will be back for our final session in just a few minutes. We have two wonderful faculty members who will be sharing the strategies that they use to create assignments and assessments that spur engagement and academic success. You'll see how they use Top Hat to support their efforts. And at the end of the session, we'll provide a demonstration of some of the go-to features that they'll be touching on. So not just inspiration, but also the important how-to as well. Thank you all for joining. Wishing you a very happy summer. If you don't join us for the next session, we hope to see you there.
Take care. Happy teaching.